Hey, welcome back, everybody, for another round of Questioning Constructs. We are your hosts. I am John, and this is.
And I'm Rebecca. Welcome back. It's been a minute, but we're here.
It's it's been a minute. A lot of life has happened, as it tends to happen in between these sessions. But as always, I'm grateful to be here. Happy to be recording one, and hopefully we'll be able to get through it without any issues here. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump into our topic for the day. Face down, head first. What do you got for us, Rebecca?
Yes. So I have a fun question for you. I have two questions. But let me give the premise for it. So we've all heard the statement, or at least a statement somewhat similar to like the past repeats itself. And so I think something fun to get a little creative and also maybe see if that's true is ask ourselves a couple of questions. So I'll ask the second question later, but my first question is you exist in a period of time uh, in the past. And so by past, I mean, let's say before electricity, a completely different way of life. So that could be Civil War time and like to ancient history. You can exist at any point of time and you have any skill set that you want to have that will allow you to make one discovery, be the person that made that discovery. So whether it's discovering King Tut's tomb, whether it's um discovering America, whatever you want your discovery to be, what discovery are you taking credit for and why?
Dang. That's kind of a tough one because that means I gotta co-op somebody else's work, and I'd rather discover something undiscovered. But if I am to discover something that we already make use of, I think, um, uh, what would I want to discover? I don't know. See, like my brain when I hear this question like goes a bunch of different ways that I think are kind of unexpected. Like the
Okay.
first thing I think of is the fact that most of the people who make the discoveries are unknown. People like Thomas Edison have famously taken their ideas from other inventors and then proposed them as their own. And as we kind of
Hmm.
like grow into adulthood, we see more and more examples of these things. Like Steve Jobs didn't make the iPod, right? But we know Steve Jobs as the guy for iPods, right? Um, Same thing with Elon Musk and Tesla as an example for electric vehicles. Like the people who popularize the thing aren't necessarily the people who discover it. So I don't know that there's any fame or anything to be taken out of those discoveries. But from a humanitarian standpoint, if I was going to do something for the good of the world, putting it in that kind of frame of reference, there was recently, in our current day and age, a discovery of I guess, using a certain material so that when air kind of flows through it, it collects water.
Mm,
And they're like using this material up on buildings out in like third world countries to go ahead and gather more water for them, more like actual suitable drinking water. I think that's a pretty cool discovery, actually. Like being able to figure out what that material is that processes it in such a way that we can pull it out of the air. That's pretty freaking cool. Um, and I don't even know that that's like an outright discovery, right? Like as much as it is somebody scienced it out. You know what I mean? Like, would you
mm-hmm.
call that a discovery?
Yeah, I would. Um, I think that's a really good one, especially because drinking water is probably going to get harder and harder to come by.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially in places where there's so little rainfall. or it's not the same as in a lot of the parts of the US where we do get more rain um, than I would say some of the areas that utilize that technology. Or even like we use, what are they called? But they're the rain chains that you can hang off like the sides of gutters and they'll collect the rain.
Yeah,
I guess maybe they're just called rain collectors,
it'll make
but
it like
there's so many.
smoother.
Yeah, but not
Yep.
only that, but you people can use those and put them in a barrel and then collect rainwater that way and store it for later use. So, um, I do think that that's pretty genius of an invention. I would consider that I think like discovery in broad terms. And you actually got to my second question. I was gonna say, okay, in present day, so electricity and onwards, what would you want your discovery to be? So that answers half of that equation.
Well, the other thing that I was thinking of when you asked that
Uh-huh.
was that you added a piece to that question, right? That the question was what discovery in what day and age, and despite or in spite of how much our generation and how much discomfort there is amongst people in today's day and age. We're living in the best time in history. Um, so I think I would always choose to live in today's age rather than any other age, but I think I also have additional things to think about. So it's a little easier for me to clearly say there's probably a right answer, in terms of a timeline of history where I would want to be.
Interesting.
But yeah,
Well, if you had to go back to Civil War or prior,
I
what
would
would
not
you?
want to.
Okay, you are dropped into this time period. You have no other option. You exist there. Like, what discovery are you making? Like, I'm just curious, like, what part of the question I think that is fun is what interests you to discover? Like, we have the ability to look back and see all of the discoveries, but like, imagine being the first one to discover it. Like, what
it's
thing
it's
would
tough
just
because it's
spark excitement to be like, oh my gosh?
for me,
Yeah,
I have a hard time separating like our history with discovery. That's the thing, is like you're right, there probably would be like a magical things to discover, um but like I don't know. I
wait, wait. So I have another question then. Like, have you never thought about this? Like normal, like when in history class when you're learning about all these different things, right? There wasn't like a moment, there wasn't anything that you were like, wow, would have been really cool to be there when the discovery was happening. Is that? I'm
n-
just so curious. That is that genuinely not a question that you've thought or
no,
asked
but
yourself?
to clarify, it's hard to separate like the time of which I would go ahead and like I, it's such a good question, and I feel like my literal mind is gonna bring it down and make it not fun. But it is a fun question. The problem is that it today's day and age is probably the best day and age to ever be black in history, no matter what country, no matter what place in world. So it, like for me, it's hard to separate that question into just the fun part, because there's no way, if I were to be dropped in any day and age, unless I was dropped in, something other than what I am, it would not be a fun discovery, even if it was a fun discovery. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's hard for me to separate that. Um,
I guess I've never thought about that way because, like, as a on on a level of being a woman,
mm,
for most points in time, I guess that rule still applies. But to me, I just get so excited about discovery itself that I'm like, like,
yeah,
what
it's
would I
tough for
want to be a
me.
part of?
It's tough. I mean,
Because
if I was gonna,
we're already breaking the rules of time travel here by throwing us somewhere where we're not. So, like, to me,
All
I
right,
didn't
so if I'm gonna go
logically
back
know
in
this would be
time and it's gonna be a utopian society where everybody's happy and everything is perfect,
okay.
what would I
Fair.
want to discover?
There you
Um,
go.
in that magical place where everybody is okay and good all the time, I would want to discover dinosaurs. I think the
Oh.
initial discovery of dinosaurs is pretty cool. I think that I would want to discover the fact that there are um, species that we could not even dream of, or fossils of things that we could not even like conceptually put together. So much so that like we live in today's day and age, and those bones, there's still some questions in the air as to like how those bones actually fit together. I think that would be cool. Or secondary runner up, I would love to have to be the guy who discovers um, some of these ancient pyramids, ancient tombs, and be
Mm-hmm.
like a real life Indiana Jones. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that'll be my answer.
Okay. Dinosaurs, I don't know what I was expecting you to say. That was not one of them. That's actually a pretty cool answer. And to think about it, I don't know who was the first person or what was the first dinosaur to be discovered. So that in and of itself is curious. Um,
I'm sure it's difficult because I mean a lot of that, like, you're not discovering a dinosaur, right? You're discovering a bone fragment, right?
mhm.
And then you just find like you find this thing, it's weird. Like, to be honest, like if we were to really, I hate that I'm so literal about this stuff. If we were really to examine this question, the first person to ever discover like a bone of an ancient creature has no idea what that is and probably uses it to scratch their back.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a doorstop, right?
Oh my god,
Like,
that's so crazy you said doorstop because I was going to come in with a supporting story of how this woman ever since she was like young, I don't know, let's say 20s, 30s, right? Or like whenever she moved into her house with her husband, she was in Asia. She was using like, I think the stone was, let's just say in the millions of dollars. It's this giant, it's like this big hunk of
mhm,
amber as her
yeah,
doorstop. And she's like, I
yeah.
don't know, it's just a rock. And everyone else is like, you've had like millions of dollars in like prehistoric amber, just you being used as a doorstop for your house. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
There's a recent there was a recent story. I say recent. I don't know how recent means here. But of somebody who had the Testament of Judas in just up in their like attic, and they were in need of money, and they were like, "Hey, this is some ancient piece of the Bible. Let me go pawn it off." And they go and pawn this this lost testament off, and it's like it completely reframes like the idea of who Judas is in the Bible, famously the betrayer, and puts Judas in a completely different light. Like that, it's crazy, but stuff like that happens, you know.
Or I always think about sometimes like how much is not truly lost to the world, but it's just sitting somewhere in storage. There was this lady's New York apartment. She died, and then of course they're either having an estate sale or they're cleaning it out. Something's going on, but they find like millions of dollars worth of artwork and some like lost paintings of some artist. I forget who, but like she I guess had like purchased them or like someone forgot, it's forever
See,
ago in time and then it's just been sitting there totally fine and then gets rediscovered.
this to me, this is a fun question. See, I can enjoy this question, right? Which is, if you could locate anything in the world, like if it were to just pop up and you were the one to find it, what is it that you would want to find? Like that to me feels like fun because uh, um there are so many things that I would want to find. Like I didn't want to be the guy to find. Like it's hard to pick like the best one. Although I'm probably gonna default to finding like magic cards. Like
Oh,
I would
interesting.
want to find like that long lost case where they have like some of the original magic cards in there, you know, and you've got crazy mana rocks in there that I now am like a millionaire, you know.
Okay. Okay. I would say so. I think for oh,
We
hold
will.
on. If you can hear.
Oh, that
Okay.
literally went by. Your face got lit up and everything.
Oh yeah. I'm like right on Main Street right now.
Mm.
So I would say in order for what I would want my discoveries to be, I would say in a historic discovery, I'm right up there with you with like the pyramids, but not necessarily Egypt, but more so like Central America, like Mayans, places in the rainforest. I think that'd be really sick uh, to see all of that. And then modern day would be honestly, I think there's so much benefit and positive things that have come out of 3D printing. I always just think of um, prosthetic limbs and the advances that we've been able to make with that, or even just making them affordable for people, uh, making anything affordable. But the one that always sticks out to me is a kid that 3D printed a hand, but then built a program that based on certain ways you move the fingers, it allowed you to talk. So for people who potentially are nonverbal, um, or maybe who are deaf, and I just think that's some of the coolest things. Or even like during COVID, where people were 3D printing things for people, like um, that would be really cool to be someone to bring that into the world. But then if I'm if I'm locating something in this present time, I have two, but when I locate it, do I just know where it is and I'm going to it, or does it get pulled to me? Because
No,
or do I have the option?
you discover it.
I just okay.
The same premise, right? You discover anything that you want, but it's just in today's day and age. Like what would you want to turn up that like not necessarily a discovery as in an invention, but you come across it and you're like, holy crap, I just came across this. There's no
Okay.
way.
So I have two. The first one is a little crazy, but I don't know if I would want to. I don't know if I'd want to share it with the rest of the world, just because I don't necessarily know what people would do. But I think the Ark of the Covenant, I think would be really wild to just be like, oh my god, I found this.
And for
Um,
layman's like myself, what is the Ark of the Covenant?
the Ark of the Covenant is something that's talked about in the Bible where oh, I'm gonna butcher this, but it's essentially I think it's with Moses where he's like leading everyone out of slavery in Egypt. It's like a I don't know, a box where God resided for a long time, and they would build the temple around this box. And so it had a lot of significance. And I just find it a little crazy that something that is just so significant, so revered, and like, I guess people couldn't go near it. And, just this magical box, and
Yeah,
it's just gone. Right.
yeah,
I think that's, to me, it holds the same place as when they found King Tut's tomb, and there was like the curses going on, and like they're like, wow, why was this tomb not discovered for so long? And there's a lot of gold here, and having been to his tomb, it is kind of odd why it wasn't discovered, because there's so many other tombs around there. So that to me is the same thing, like something that was for Christianity so revered and so sacred and talked about in such a manner that like people couldn't go near it or like touch it, only like the priest. It's just weird to me that it just completely disappeared. We have found the Titanic. Like, where is this box?
hmm
That one, I think it's like also curiosity, like what would happen, and like, would you hear voices? Can you just not go near it? Like, where is it, or like, where are the pieces of it? Like, do they feel a certain way? But the second one would be Atlantis. I think knowing the
Oh, I
actual,
like that one.
yeah,
I like that a lot.
because there's been theories as to where Atlantis is, or like some underwater cities where people are like, oh, this is Atlantis or was Atlantis. But I think to just know, to have that discovery and know where it is and get to see it, and that would be really interesting. Is it even where people think it
So
is?
my second one, right, my first one is magic cards for sure. I would want to discover a box full of old, first, like the first print magic cards ever, and I'm living on easy street playing magic forever. That is what I would want to discover. um the next thing that I would want to discover, and this is a little more fantastical, um alien technology. I would want
Ooh,
to get my hands on
that's
something
good.
that I literally could not use because my mind could not conceive of it, but I press a button and it does a thing. If there's buttons, or I channel energy, and all of a sudden, who knows? I'm like an alien Spider-Man.
Amazing.
I'm Ben 10 with the Omnitrix. Like I would love to come across some like futuristic technology that's beyond our current means. Um, yeah,
That's a good one. I wasn't thinking about that. That would be really cool. Or just take it a step further, like aliens. Like if they're, if
I wouldn't
you
want to
read up,
discover aliens. That's all
no,
you, bro. That's all you. I don't want to
I
discover them. I want the technology, but I already don't like people. Like I'm good. I don't want to dislike aliens too. I'm not gonna
crazy.
put myself in that situation.
I don't think I want to discover them as much as have a conversation, and
All
just,
you.
I don't know, to see one that would be really interesting.
Seeing might be cool. I don't know that like I would want to talk because like um I guess I make some core assumptions about aliens, right? If aliens exist, or to the degree that they do exist, I should say, because I feel like almost certainly they do. The degree to which aliens exist, they would be so far advanced, in comparison to us. Just when you consider the amount of the universe that we have observed, and the amount of the universe we've been able to traverse.
Hmm.
Um, so if there's a civilization, of beings that's able to traverse so much further than we have, they necessarily are far more advanced. So I think it would actually be incredibly difficult, to have a conversation with such beings, which is why I don't want to talk to them. I just want their cool shit. Excuse my language. Their cool stuff, right? Like I just want I want to fly. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
want to turn invisible. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
I want to shapeshift.
yeah, yeah. I think one that's maybe third on my list, kind of along the same lines, like fantasy creatures. Show me where
Dragons.
those dragons. Show me where those dragons and unicorns and fairies are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where the elves?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Um Dragons would be a really cool one if we're like talking about the fantastical. Like I think so aliens for me works because I personal opinion, but I feel almost certainly they do exist,
Yeah.
right? Um if we're bordering on the fantasy, right? Because dragons, there's an argument to be made that there's too many cultures who have pointed at
Mm-hmm.
this creature,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, whether it was a flying anything or maybe it was a dinosaur that could fly, right? A pterodactyl of sorts, right? This concept of dragons is kind of on the
Mm-hmm.
fringe of like reality and fantasy,
Yep.
right? And so, like, if I were to choose something that I think would be on the fringe of reality and fantasy, I think I would want, uh, man,
Mermaids.
I think mermaids would be terrifying. I think of
More than
they
shark.
would they we say mermaids, but they'd be sirens,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
they'd be terrifying. Um, I think this might be kind of a foolish one. It might be too fantastical. It doesn't border enough on reality.
Griffin.
But the Philosopher's Stone,
That'd be cool.
I think that would be really interesting to get my hands on in whatever form it takes, whether it's like real or whether it's snake oil that some religious figure sold. Um, but yeah, I think that would be interesting.
I think one of the cool things that I have seen. So I went to Egypt, and the Cairo Egyptian Museum, not the new one because they recently built up and moved all of the, maybe not all, but a good majority of the items that were in the original museum to the museum that they just built. Um, and they were still building it when I was there. So I went to the original Egyptian museum. And one of the things they had there that I had no idea that they did have, I thought this was like a mythical, like lost to time scroll book. They actually had the Book of the Dead. And so the
Hmm.
way they have it displayed, so you're walking further into the museum, and then they have like a couple of like mummies in a case, so you get to see like what they look like. Also super weird, but they had orange hair, not like dyed, but I just wasn't expecting that. It was just so surreal to see, because you would think that um it would be, mostly like black or dark brown hair or even light brown hair, potentially even blonde, but like orange hair. I just looked at that and I was like, I don't even know what to think. But then along the wall, behind glass, they had the entire book kind of laid out. So you could walk from one end to the other and just see the whole thing. And I think it would be really interesting to see how the book was used back in time. Like do we have our understanding of that correct? Because there's not many metaphysical or I don't know what you would even call it, like books that borderline on like what we would consider like spell books, or I don't know, witchcraft or fantasy or lore, that we actually have mostly intact. I would say like the Bible, Book of the Dead, or Book of Life would be two. And I think they had both right next to each other. I think it was part of one book, which I didn't know either. Um, and then there's another book that someone actually brought up to me. Oh, I forget what it's called, but no one's been able to decipher this book. I'll look it up, but no one's been able to decipher this book. It's a book that has all these crazy plant drawings and figures of women, and the text in this book has never been deciphered by any leading. I think they're called cipherists, or like code people who do code, linguistics, even AI. There's been multiple attempts with AI, and no one's been able to crack this book. Like, I think being in the room when these books are written to like truly understand like the full intent and meaning of them would be so cool. And I can look up the name. I'd never heard of this book, but it's called da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Voynich manuscript. So there's different. So it's spelled VOYNICH, and then manuscript. and it looks kind of like it's was created around the Middle Ages, but no one's been able to figure out what it is. People think that it might be a hoax. People think that, oh, no, this was used for medical purposes. And the writing is too similar, but like if you look at it, it's so eloquent, and it looks like someone spent so much time, like way too much time for it to be a prank. So I
Um,
think, yeah, go ahead.
I think there's almost a fundamentally different question that you kind of ask when providing that example,
Mm-hmm.
which
Endless.
is like, what event would you kind of want to be on a fly on the wall for, right? Like if you didn't necessarily have to drop in and live in that day and age, but you could be there to see the thing, right? What would that be? Um, and I think that that's kind of like a different thing entirely, right? Because like
Yeah.
this idea of being there to see what this book is and what it's referencing. So let me ask that: what do you think you would where would you want to be?
Man, I feel like that question has so many more answers, even more so than like what do you want to discover? And I feel like my answers change all the time. Like for a long time I was like ancient Egypt, I want to see it. I want to see everything, but now I think honestly Atlantis I think would still be cool. Atlantis, I think I'd want, I don't know if Garden of Eden might be really cool. Or even and this is where I think it gets, oh, this is something that I think is interesting. I don't necessarily want to be alive at this time, but did you know that almost every single religion has a story about a great flood happening at approximately the same moment in
Yeah.
time? That was like one of the, okay, so I think we both had this teacher. His name was Mr. Moran. Shout out to Mr. Moran if you ever see this, because you were one of the best teachers ever. But one of the things that I learned from him is that fact. And so someone else made a point that they're discovering more and more underground civilizations or bunkers, what could have been used to house civilizations. And so I saw a video recently that said, what if all of these underground civilizations were because of this great flood period, and they're related? And I just thought that was such a wild thought and concept. Um, so that might be interesting to figure out. Like, was it really something that everyone knew about and predicted and was already preparing for? I don't know.
I kind of and I have no knowledge of anything, so I'm just talking. But um, I think I've seen a bunch of articles recently. I haven't jumped into them, but like articles talking about a civilization that existed before, like the earliest dated civilization,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like they keep finding older and older examples groups of people, and I find it hard to believe that like if like imagine if Super Pangea was a thing. I don't know if that's fully agreed upon across the board, but if it is fully agreed upon that Super Pangea was a thing, right? And these continents were all connected, right? And we know global warming is a fact of us rotating the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the axis by which we rotate, uh, we know has an effect on our weather system. It's quite literally how we came to be. The third rock from the sun. We got lucky enough to end up here in order to facilitate life, right? Um, that that said, right, like it's not really a crazy thing for me to like imagine like okay in space, if everything is cold and we have this explosion of um, the cosmos, right? And our rock lands, um, the third rock from the sun, and I imagine when it does that, there's a great amount of heat and cooling that takes place, right? Could it could it be that, like, you know there were large ice caps and this sort of thing, and through global warming and these continents separating, um, there was a mass melting of ice that like melted and caused this great shifting and great flood that took over the world, and destroyed existence as people who existed back then knew it. Like, that sounds super cool. Like, in terms of a story, like, sad for them, but like cool, like, story wise. Like, it feels plausible. I don't know any science behind it, so I can't speak to it. But like, as a story, it sounds pretty plausible. Um, yeah. This For anybody who's listening, this is why I say I'm a pseudo intellectual, because I like to pretend that I do like these deep dives and interesting, like, theorizing, when really I like to play in the realm of fantasy and sound like I know what I'm talking about. But it definitely sounds like it could have been something.
Also, actually, something really interesting that you hear about, when people question, well, when you have super Pangea, and for those of you that have never heard the term, it's just all land at one point was connected.
Our continents are split up into
Yeah,
different land masses
yeah.
across the world.
Hmm.
um, and before they was split up on these continental lines, right,
The
on
tectonic
the
plates.
tectonic plates,
Hmm.
they were all one mass. um, that's the idea.
Yeah. So one of and I just thought of this, but so one of the questions that I've heard asked, and maybe they don't know for sure, but there's theories, is how did people get to America? So when Columbus, not that he even discovered America, when Columbus came to America, um, there were already Native Americans here. And so how did they get on this continent, right?
Even they migrated, yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And so they talk about, I forget what it's called, but there's a specific land bridge that they tag as like people. Okay, well, people probably migrated over that land bridge when it was ice, or like coming through from like Alaska, and like Russia to Alaska, or like to that part, and then down and into the Americas. Well, if we're continuing to find these underground civilizations, and I haven't done my own research to properly outline the timeframes in which they have, given to when these underground civilizations have been constructed. But is it possible that instead of going overland, they went underneath the land? If we, and just a certain way that things broke up. I don't know. It's a lot more difficult, I think, to find something that's underground than above ground,
I
in some cases.
I think it's a cool idea. I just don't know enough about the world, or what our ability is to survey the ground, or um, uh, I mean, our ability to sense things within the earth has grown dramatically, right?
Hmm.
Like, but I don't know what the limitations of that are. So I don't know how likely or unlikely. Off rip, it feels unlikely, but just as unlikely as dragons, right? Like, could it be plausible? Sure, right? But it's on that, like, edge of fantasy. Um, that said, I feel like it would be interesting to, like, see if that was the case. Uh, all life, I think, majority of intellectuals. I want to say that, but I don't know for sure. I feel like that's a strong statement. But I think it's agreed that life almost certainly started in Africa, and
Mhm.
Africa is the world's cradle, right? Or humanity's cradle, right? Humans existed there and migrated from Africa to other regions, but humans were almost certainly um, originate from Africa. Um, it is interesting, like the idea of, well, how did people get to the places they got to? Because obviously, just looking at the differences in complexion between you and I, right? Clearly, they existed there for quite a while,
I'm shining,
right?
beaming with the sun right here.
They clearly existed in their respective locations for quite a while, um, after migration,
Hmm.
right? So enough for us to develop different resistances to the world around us. Um,
And I mean, that's something I think about too. So whether we started in Africa or not, there's so many varieties or like variations is the word I want with people. I mean, not just like skin tone, but features, how you've acclimated to climates, how long does this take, um, and from like a lot of times when you go to museums and they have the timeline of human history. It's like, okay, well, we found this skull here, and then this skull over here, and then this skull here, and it's like loosely related, but it's like, okay, but how are they interconnected? And were there multiple to start? And they just branched out very quickly. Uh, because something else that I think about, so whether you're religious or not, I think this is so fascinating because I've never gotten a straight answer on this. Most people with Christianity are familiar with the kind of like first two stories in that, well, I guess first three stories. So like God created the world and then he created Adam and Eve. And then from Adam and Eve, they had two children, Cain and Abel. And then the story of Cain and Abel is Cain was jealous of Abel. He killed him and then God cast him out. And like and like forever cursed him essentially. But in this story, you're only like, I don't know, a couple chapters into the Bible where this story happens. But Cain's like, oh, I'm afraid. And God's like, well, why are you afraid? And he's like, well, all the other people are going to kill me. And so that's why God marks him. And I'm always like, well, where are the other people? If you believe the Bible literally, then you believe God created Adam and Eve, and then they had Cain and Abel. Where are all these other people coming from? It like never
I
answers that question, and anyone that I've asked doesn't have an answer for that. And so I think it's really
I
fascinating that there's so much variety in different people, um, coupled with, how did that all occur and when?
I think that that's always a like a tough question to examine, because like I think you have to buy into a very specific religion in order to work within those definitions, right? Because like the Gnostic Bible, right? They consider themselves Christians as well, but it was the demiurge who created humans, I believe. Um, and they consider themselves Christians, right? And there was a time where there was a question of, and I'm speaking totally out of my butt right now. I haven't done the research on any of this. This is just what I pick up from listening to other scholars who have talked about this, because I often find myself listening to atheists and religious figures debating. Um, my favorite right now, listening to the Cosmic Skeptic, Alex O'Connor. One of my Yeah, I love listening to his debates, but neither here nor there. It's there was a point in time where like this idea of Christianity was so uh, what's the word, uh, it existed in so many places in society that when people said go to the church, they had to specify about which church. Because if you just said the Christian church, the Church of God, if you had just said go to the Church of God, you were just as likely to end up in a Gnostic church rather than what we would deem today as a Christian church, right? And so there's a question of like, were there other gods, right? Even within the idea of like Christianity in and of itself, depending on what branch of Christianity you're in, right? Like religion is this whole other thing, but I think I still default to what I think majority of scholars acknowledge, which is we all came from the cradle of the earth, right? Um, but that said, it would be interesting if it happened to be that like there were sporadic places on Pangea, Super Pangea, where like you were on the north side of Super Pangea, and they were on the south side of Super Pangea, right? Like I think the idea of it would be cool, and I think it again this kind of borders on the realm of like fantasy for me, right? Like I can imagine it, the same way I can imagine D&D races. You have drows and you have dwarves, and but like for me, I think it's all of it, including the idea that Africa is like the cradle of the earth. These are stories that we tell, right, to inform how we move around the world. The slow nod. But yeah, so I think it's definitely,
Yeah.
I mean,
I just always think that the concept is like really fascinating. Like, I think it's probably more my internet connection versus.
there was a wealth of time in between there.
Oh no.
Oh,
Are you there?
it's, well,
Oh, did I lose you? Okay.
we went a while.
Yes. Okay. We got a nod. We got a
I
nod.
can't tell. I can't tell. I can't tell when you're here with me and when you're not.
Oh no. I think internet connection. Okay, okay. Can you hear me now?
I can definitely hear
No.
you.
No.
All right, hold on. Let's try this.
Oh
I want you to
no.
say one, and then count how
We
long
did. We
before I
did.
say one.
Oh, I hope you get that was such a good conversation too. I bet this oh no. Can you hear me? I think the podcast is going to pick all this up and it's going to be really funny. We went from a serious conversation to nothing. Okay. Maybe uh okay. All right. One.
One.
One. You know what's funny is I saw you say something, but I didn't hear you. Okay. I'm stopping it for tonight. Love you guys. We'll be back. We'll ask some questions next time.